Trump's longtime financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, has pleaded guilty to more than a dozen counts related to criminal fraud, financial fraud. Something that Trump is also accused of, but we'll see if he ever suffers real criminal consequences for it, because it appears that the district attorney in New York might be dropping that case, but we'll get to that in a moment. First, let's get to Weisselberg. What's up with him? Well, Weisselberg was charged last year with grand larceny and criminal tax fraud, among other alleged crimes. He and the Trump organization were accused of carrying out a scheme to defraud government authorities by failing to report their real compensation. I believe the cool kids referred to it as getting paid under the table to essentially avoid having to pay taxes. And what I thought was fascinating about this story is how the investigation started. It really began with Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, spilling the beans under oath. Let's watch.
I want to ask a little bit about your conversation with my colleague from Missouri about asset inflation. To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
Who else knows that the president did this?
Alan Weisselberg, Ron Lieberman, and Matthew Calamari.
And where would the committee find more information on this? Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes, and you'd find it at the Trump org.
Now, no word on what happened with Mr. Calamari. However, we do know that Weisselberg will spend some time in Rikers Island. So the indictment alleges that the Trump organization paid the rent and utilities for a Manhattan apartment where he lived and financed the leases for the Mercedes-Benz cars for Weisselberg and his wife, but failed to report this as income and pay the necessary taxes. The indictment also said he intentionally omitted his compensation from his tax returns. So, if you're getting paid through a company, through the Trump organization in the form of cars and other goodies, you are supposed to report that as income. You're supposed to get taxed. There are varying reports on how much he skirted in federal taxes, with the higher estimates all the way up to $2 million, and he will have to pay that money back, I'm sure with interest as well. Weisselberg obscured about 1.7 million in his compensation from tax authorities over a period from 2005 to 2017, dodging hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal, state, and local taxes. He also acknowledged guilt on every charge and agreed to testify, if called, at a pending trial for the Trump company. As part of the plea agreement, Weisselberg would spend 5 months behind bars. Again, this would be at Rikers Island, followed by 5 years of probation. And there are some, if you're excited that this might mean that he's gonna turn on Trump, don't get too excited. I'll explain why in a moment. But first, Cenk, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so there's 3 different types of crimes that they could have gotten Weisselberg and Trump on, and distinguishing between them is very important. So we're gonna do that. But first, let me note that the way that Michael Cohen says, Matthew Calamari, is awesome. Okay, yeah, you can find it with a Weisselberg or the Calamari, okay? All right, so now onto the serious stuff. So there's the thing that they got Weisselberg on. We gave you an apartment, we gave you a car, you didn't report it under the table. Okay, that's illegal, it's bad. But it's the least bad of the 3. The second one is what Michael Cohen was actually referring to, which is, hey, you say for tax purposes, golly gee, I barely made any money. I don't have any taxes to pay. And then when you're trying to get a loan for your properties, you say, oh, my assets are incredible, and I've got all this money.
I have the biggest assets.
The biggest assets, surrounded by other big assets.
Kim Kardashian would be jealous
of my assets. Okay, and I got no problems there, I'll tell you that right now. Okay, so anyways, so that's a bigger crime. I don't know why that's not being discussed in any of the plea deals, and it's driving me crazy because Cohen said it on national, so you just saw it,
yes.
right? And then there's a third layer, which is all of the other underlying criminality at the Trump organization. I've always assumed, based on the fact pattern, that Trump did money laundering for the Russians. Now that was a while back. I don't know if the statute of limitations have run out. I don't know if they were able to get any evidence, but what I was hoping for is that Weisselberg would flip on Trump and not admit things they didn't do. That doesn't help anybody. That would be awful, right? We're not looking for injustice, we're looking for justice, okay? But if they had done these things together, that Weisselberg flips and then Trump's in a lot of trouble for major crimes. But as it looks right now, he's not flipping on Trump. He's gonna give evidence on Trump organization. That's Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, saying, I swear to God, I'm never gonna prosecute Donald Trump. Never, ever gonna do it. And focusing on the most minor crimes as opposed to the major crimes also shows you Bragg is either the biggest loser in terms of a prosecutor in the whole country, weakest, saddest man in America, or has some sort of weirdo corruption involved here.
There's something
because this is
going
not
on.
normal.
No, it's not normal. I think it's insane that you have enough evidence to criminally prosecute Weisselberg, and yet you're not actively and aggressively pursuing the criminal investigation into Donald Trump and his possible financial crimes. So I want to talk about that a little bit because Weisselberg, and here's the thing about Alvin Bragg, right? There was a plea agreement here, which is why he's only gonna serve 5 months in prison as opposed to a lengthier sentence, right? But as part of the plea agreement, it could have been negotiated to ensure that Weisselberg would testify in regard to Donald Trump's potential criminal financial fraud in the criminal case. But they didn't include that as part of the plea agreement. Why? I'm very curious about that. That's very strange.
Yeah, I'll add 2 more things about Alvin Bragg. First of all, by the time you figure in time served and reduction of sentence, he's only going to serve, Weisselberg's only going to serve 100 days. So that's a slap on the wrist for 50 years of criminality. So I don't know what Alvin Bragg is up to, but I wouldn't elect him dog catcher. And in fact, I'd look into his background because I don't know why he's being weirdly, unbelievably soft on Trump, which leads to the 4th crime that's never discussed in any of this. Michael Cohen already went to prison for giving hush money in violation of campaign finance laws to Donald Trump's mistresses, the porn stars. Well, both in the why didn't Alvin Bragg prosecute that? You've got a guy who did turn evidence on him and said, I'm his co-conspirator, and yet you send him to jail, but you don't ever touch Donald Trump. Why this insane Donald Trump protection racket from Alvin Bragg in Manhattan, which is supposed to be a progressive place? But in both cases, Weisselberg and Cohen, guys, there's a very simple question that needs to be asked. Who gave the order? Alan Weisselberg is not the head of the organization, he's the chief financial officer. He takes his orders from who? Donald Trump. Michael Cohen didn't decide, oh, you know what? Hey, look, there's Donald Trump's mistresses, I'll randomly give them money. No, who gave him the order? In both cases, it's obvious that Donald Trump gave him the order, but yet Alvin Bragg says, I swear to God I'm gonna protect Donald Trump, even if it means I'm gonna ignore every law there is as the prosecutor in Manhattan to make sure that I protect him. And if you're excited that Weisselberg, doing a plea deal is going to get Trump, you just don't understand the facts. And a lot of people put out that headline to entice people to read it thinking, oh my God, they're gonna get Donald Trump. They're not gonna get Donald Trump, at least not in Manhattan, as long as Alvin Bragg is either crooked or stupid and incompetent prosecutor in Manhattan.
And look, there's possible corruption. We don't know for sure. I hope that there's a decent reporter out there who's willing to investigate that. But the other thing is, Alvin Bragg just might be a coward. Because think about the type of harassment and death threats that FBI officials are getting right now after doing a raid of Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence because he had possession of extremely classified top secret documents, right? He might be afraid of having to deal with that. So who knows? We don't know what is motivating him here. But what I do know is that 2 of the prosecutors working on that criminal case, which has now stalled, quit because they wanted to move forward with the criminal prosecution, and Alvin Bragg put a stop to it. And they were furious. I'd be furious too.
No, it's possible, and that's the best case scenario for Alvin Bragg, that he's an extraordinary coward. And for his sake, I hope that's true instead of him being corrupt. We don't have any evidence to that effect. So we have a lot more evidence that Donald Trump is corrupt. It's his co-conspirators have said it all over national television. But Bragg's like, what evidence? I don't see any evidence. Okay, so Trump can still get prosecuted for Mar-a-Lago, for Georgia, for January 6th. A lot of things are possible. But this Weisselberg news is not good news, it's generally bad news. Oh, the only positive side of it is that once he testifies against Trump organization, they might officially shut down Trump organization. Never made any money anyway. I mean, he's an idiot. He used it as a way of blowing $400 million twice. Once when his daddy left it to him and once when Jeff Zucker gave it to him at The Apprentice. So he'll shut down the business, but the business has always sucked. And all it ever did was create companies that went bankrupt. So that won't hurt Donald Trump much either.